Whether you've never launched a Facebook ad before, or you're scaling at tens of thousands of dollars spent on ads every single month, you are absolutely going to want to hear from this upcoming expert. She has been running ads online for over 10 years and has spent over $20 million in ad spend. She's really mastered the art and science of Facebook ads to generate more than $90 million in sales for her clients. You do not want to miss this episode. Adrienne Richardson is a dear friend. She is the owner and founder of PowerPlay Media, and she's a Facebook ad strategist. She runs campaigns for many of the ads that you see running every day for some of the top online membership and course creators. She's been in this space for over 10 years. She's invested over $20 million in ads for her clients and made them over $90 million in revenue, which is absolutely incredible. She works with seven-figure membership and course creators one-on-one to run their ads for them, but she also has a membership where she and other experts help you in running your Facebook and Instagram ads. She's worked with people like Pete Vargas, Michael Hyatt, Chris Winfield and Jen Gottlieb, Shanda Sumter, Selena Sue, Think Media, a lot of these people that you really know and love, and you see their ads. Adrienne is the master behind them. I cannot wait for her to share with us all of her ad expertise. Adrienne, friend, I'm so glad we're finally having this conversation because you and I have talked about ads a lot. I used to, back in the day, have an ads agency, but when you haven't touched it in a really long time, things change significantly. So you are the go-to expert for all of the industry's leading people in the online space. And so I wanted to bring you on so that we could talk about, if I've never ran an ad before, like how do I get started? And then once you start running ads, you kind of get to the next problem, which is how do I know when to scale? What should I be looking for? And then if I think I'm ready to scale, like what does it actually look like? And there's nobody better to ask when it comes to anything Facebook or Instagram ad related than you. So friend, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me. I feel like we've been talking about this for months. We both have just crazy schedules and we keep saying, we need to do this, we need to do this. And so I'm so glad that we finally were able to carve out some time to get on here together and talk about all things Facebook.
I love it. Okay, so before we get started, tell us, what is your favorite community you've ever been a part of? And what do you love about it?
I mean, I've been part of lots of communities over the years, especially business masterminds in the last 10 years that I've been doing this. And I'd have to say that my favorite by far is one called the Wellspring. It is a business mastermind, but there's just incredible people in there that give. And we've been able to create connections in there that I haven't been able to do in other communities before. So I'd have to say that's definitely my favorite.
I love it. And that one's specifically a faith-based community. And we talk on this podcast a lot about like similar missions, similar culture and values and how important that is. So I'm sure that that really sets it apart from all the other business masterminds that are out there.
Yeah. I mean, when most business masterminds out there are focused on business, and the Wellspring is a business mastermind for Christians. And so that's one of the things that we all have in common. Sometimes the thing you all have in common is you all run an agency or are coaches, or the masterminds typically have something that links everybody together, but this one just happens to be faith-based.
I love that. Okay, we're going to dive right in because I know this is an important topic for so many, including myself. And it's something that until people dive in, it's really a mystery. But even when they dive in, they still feel like they don't really have their arms around it. And you work one-on-one basically as a consultant and run ads for leading launches. You also have a membership program that's kind of like a done with you program that teaches people how to run their own ads and supports them in that journey. But I'm thinking about the person who has been able to grow a successful membership or course organically. And that's just not cutting it anymore, you know? Like they know that they're missing out on a large audience, whether because they want to build their list with ads or they want to launch with ads, whatever it might be. So how does that person get started? Like they've never run a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad before.
Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about specifically with memberships, and like you said, you've been selling to your organic audience, the first thing that you want to acknowledge or remember is that it's way harder to sell to people who are not familiar with who you are, never heard of you. And so you might have a strategy you're using to bring people in through your warm traffic, through your social media following and things like that. And that particular strategy may not work for cold traffic. And so I always encourage people that the first time you're going to be running ads, the easiest type of ad to set up and the least difficult one to mess up is to run ads just simply to some kind of free lead magnet, right? And that way you at least get these people on your email list. You're using ads to build an asset that you own once you have their email address and they're on your list. And then that way you can build relationship and rapport and trust with them and sell them into your membership through your email marketing. You could attempt to go direct from an ad to a sales page to sell your membership, but that's very difficult to do with cold traffic. And so unless you're experienced and you know what you're doing and you know you've got a sales page that's going to crush it, I recommend for people that are starting to go the route of the easiest, least resistance, and that is just to simply start building your email list.
And should that be like a lot of people talk about lead ads on Facebook now, where you click the button and it just auto fills your Facebook information and they submit it right there? Should it be a lead ad like that, or should it go to a landing page like we're all familiar with?
I am not a fan of lead ads. I know that there's people out there who love them, but the reason that I'm not a fan is because it doesn't take much effort for them to actually get onto your email list. The form is kind of pre-filled out for them based on your Facebook information. There's not a lot of information that you can put into those lead forms. And so I find that those leads tend to not be as strong as someone who is read your ad, clicked your ad, goes to a landing page that has even more information that's very specific. And then that person actually puts in their information. It just, because it required a little bit more effort and they were given more information up front, you'll tend to grow a list full that's what I call power leads, that are people who have the problem that you solve and they're looking for a solution than a lead form does. So I'm just not a fan of them.
So that's the difference between quantity and quality of leads, which I know is a big debate in the industry. We can get to that. But first, I want to talk about types of ads. So we've said, okay, we're going to do an ad to a list builder, right? And we're going to do a landing page. We're not going to do a lead form. Are there particular types of ads, like image versus video and video formats, or no image or video at all? Are there any sort of quick tips that you can give around, if I were only going to run one type of ad, which the recommendation is probably not to do that, but what would be your go-to recommendation for ad creative?
So this might surprise you, especially because of how popular video content is these days. But I typically tell people to start with static image ads, very strong copy and static image ads. And that is because video ads are hit or miss. They tend to get a lot of engagement, but they don't often result in a conversion. And so before you go through all the effort of creating a video, it's like adding one more variable that you're did it not work because it was my video, or did it not work because of whatever? And so I try to keep as few variables as possible in the beginning and just go with the tried and true. And so, some really strong ad copy along with images is what I would test first. I usually test 3 images at a time. And then once I know how those images perform, then maybe the next round or the third round, I'm testing video ads. But I don't typically go right to video ads out of the gate because they are not as reliable in conversions as static image ads are.
And they take more time to create. So it actually, especially for those of you listening that are a little averse to video, which I know some of you are, they take more time to create, which gives you an excuse to not do it, right? You're like, oh, I don't have my script yet, or oh, I don't really have my background done yet. So Adrienne has just squashed that excuse, so you can't use that anymore. You have Canva, you have a phone where you can take a picture of yourself to get a basic image ad up, and you have ChatGPT to help you create some really compelling ad copy. So excuses out the door. in that regard, you should be able to get an ad launched, and Facebook makes it really easy for you these days to do it for both Facebook and Instagram. And is that kind of your recommendation, is like Facebook and Instagram?
If we were having this conversation maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I would have been telling you to only run your ads on Facebook in the beginning, because Instagram, the behavior on Instagram is very different than on Facebook. Facebook to me is the only actual true social media platform where people go and have back and forth conversations. Typically on Instagram, people are scrolling, they're just looking to be entertained. They might comment, but you don't really see a lot of back and forth conversations happening between the person who has the page and the people who are visiting. And so on Instagram, the results tend to be very different. And however, Facebook's algorithm has improved greatly in the last few months in terms of what they call advantage placement. It used to be known as auto placement, which you're giving Facebook permission or Meta permission to decide if they're going to put the ad on Facebook or on Instagram. And their algorithm used to be really bad at choosing for you. And so I would always tell people, don't do Instagram until you have Facebook locked in. Like you got the right images, the right copy, the right audience, the right funnel, the right everything. And then when you know you've got it locked in on Facebook, then go to Instagram. But Facebook is doing a better job these days with the advantage placement. And so I actually do recommend that people start with advantage placement now. And then if you're not getting great results, then just put your ads on Facebook first until you get them locked in and then move to Instagram.
Okay, that's super helpful. Makes it even easier to do it. And then the last thing around setting up that initial ad is really targeting. And I know in the past, it used to be as specific as possible with your targeting. And I've heard some people say lately, actually get more broad with your targeting. So where do you stand on that? What's sort of your recommendation for choosing targeting, especially when you're first getting started and you don't have retargeting audiences of people that have already been on your list or already visited your website?
Yeah, I think that it's important for people to be very careful where they get their information from and what kind of ads that those people run that are giving that advice. Because the majority of businesses that run ads on Facebook are actually e-commerce brands and like big brands. And people out there giving advice for that is very different than if you're like a coach or a consultant and you're running webinar ads or things like that. That same advice doesn't really apply. So people that are saying, do a lot broader audiences. If you sell products or you sell something to the masses that like everybody would want, then broad targeting is actually the way to go. But if you're like, I only work with dentists, then broad targeting is not going to work well. And so I've always been a fan of super specific targeting. That's one of the two specialties. My specialties are targeting and scaling. And so with targeting, we tend to get as specific as we possibly can in the beginning. You want to put your ads in front of the people who are most likely to be your ideal client and take action, especially when you're testing something new. And then we'll tend to go broader and broader after we know we've got our message dialed in, we've got our images, like we've got everything dialed in. And so I'm still a fan of specific targeting. Now, Facebook's algorithm is liking bigger audiences. So we try to make our ad sets, like each audience in the ad set, somewhere between 1 and 4 million when possible. Too much bigger than that, it's too broad. And sometimes it's like, well, there's not a million dentists in the United States. So then the audience size is what it is. But I still do start with as specific targeting as I can do. And then once I have things dialed in, I will start going broader and broader to see. But that if you sell a widget or a something that is for everyone, then broader targeting can sometimes work.
Okay, so let's talk about this because we keep saying when we get things dialed in. There are so many stats on the back end of the Facebook ad manager, and I know many of them are completely irrelevant. So when we are telling people they've got these ads running, how do they know if it's dialed in? What are you looking for? You know, you hear people talk about click-through rate, cost per click, ROAS or return on ad spend. So what is the measurement or measurements that people need to be looking at in order to determine, is this ad ready to scale?
Well, I'm going to give you as simple of an answer as I can give you, and then I'm going to give you the real answer that's a little bit more complex. The simple answer is that 1% click-through rate. So click-through rate means the percentage of people who saw your ad that actually clicked on it. And Facebook's minimum measurement of saying that you did a good job of putting the right message in front of the right people is 1%. So that is a good KPI for you to keep an eye on, to be like, what is my click through rate? And that will tell you, if it'll give you an indicator of whether you put together a strong message and you put it in front of the right people and you chose good images. The next thing that you're looking for, and again, let's just use this because the KPI is different for every kind of funnel, but let's say we just talk about the lead magnet like we did at the beginning of our call, where somebody's just opting in for something that's free. You're shooting for like a 20 to 25% minimum opt-in rate, or so percentage of people who clicked on the ad. 100 people click on the ad, 20 to 25 people are opting in. That is a good indicator that your landing page is, it again has strong messaging and it's doing the job that it should be doing. And so what your click-through rate determines your cost per click, and the percentage of people who opt in is going to determine how much it costs you to get somebody on your email list. And all of them work together. And so, what I use as a metric to determine success is, what is it costing me to get someone on my email list? And if I'm in the B2B space, meaning I'm selling to businesses, I'm looking to get that for $10 or less. And if I'm in B2C and I'm selling to consumers, I'm looking to get that at $5 or less. And so if you have a 1% click through rate or higher, and you have 20 to 25% minimum or more opting in, you should be able to hit those numbers. And so that's like the most basic of the numbers you should be looking at. People tell me, what's a good cost per click? It's irrelevant because you don't have control over cost per click. You only have control over the click through rate. And that dictates the cost per click. And then even if the cost per click is high because of demand, the better your landing page converts, the lower your cost per lead is going to be. So you have control over that as well. So I just focus on the things that I can control. The bigger, more complicated answer that is the right answer, but it would take us an entire call to do is, each individual business really should know how much they can afford to spend to acquire a lead or a sale. And
It's
that's
your lifetime value, friends. We have a whole
yes.
episode on calculating it. That's why it's
So
important.
if you know the lifetime value of a customer, then you know, and you know what profit margins, you know what expenses you have, you back all those numbers out, and then it will tell you how much you can afford to spend to acquire a lead or a sale. And that becomes the metric that drives everything. Even if your cost per click is high, but you're hitting the metric of, I need to acquire a lead or sale for this much or less, then you're winning. Right. And so a lot of people make the mistake is they don't actually know what the lifetime value of a customer is. They don't know profit margins, they don't know expenses. And so they are just kind of guessing what sounds high to them. Like, I'll give you a perfect quick example. I have a client that's an e-commerce client that has a women's clothing store online, and it costs us $12 to make a sale for someone to buy something from their site. And our client was just so upset. They were like, that's way too much. Like, we shouldn't have to spend $12 to get somebody to buy something from us. And I said, well, what's the lifetime value of your customer? And he was like, I don't know. And I said, well, you go figure that out and then come back to me and tell me what it is. And so he comes back to me later and he says, $600. I said, so you're telling me that you don't want to spend $12 to acquire a $600 sale? And he was like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, so if I was like, give me $12, I'll give you 600, how many times a day would you do that? Right. And so in his mind, because he didn't know the lifetime value of his customer, he thought $12 was a lot, when in fact, he should have been doubling, tripling, quadrupling his ad spend. He was hindering the growth of his business by not knowing his numbers.
Yeah, we talk a lot about this on the podcast, about knowing your numbers and the importance of data, like letting data drive the decisions. And so we'll put in the show notes the link to that lifetime value episode and the calculator. We have a free calculator for those of you with memberships to calculate that lifetime value. And with membership, it's really important because you may lose money month 1, month 2. But if you know your average member stays for 10 months or 12 months or 18 months, then look at all those months of profitability. So it's really important, especially for those of you with memberships, to recognize this number, to look at the lifetime value, and to maybe not expect to have a positive return on investment in the first 30 days. It is
For
a
sure.
long game in all ways when it comes to ads, because we have this nurturing aspect to it, but then we also are acquiring a lot of that lifetime value over time. So that's really important. I love how you talked about it and just kind of narrowed this long list of metrics down to look at your click-through rate and then look at your conversion rate and then your ultimately your cost per lead. And if you can get to that cost to acquire that sale, even better, especially if you know your lifetime value. And
Yep.
one of the things I think is important, and I don't want people to miss, is that what Adrienne said is there are two things, two areas of optimization. One is the ad itself, like your ad and your ad targeting. That is something that a lot of people focus on, but then they forget. They're like, oh, that's performing really well, but I'm not getting leads. Well, because there's another piece to this puzzle, there's another hoop
Mhm.
for them to jump through, and that is your landing page. And that's equally as important. And I think when it comes to the landing page, the advice that I've always heard, and you can correct this if it's wrong, is that the more your landing page looks similar to your ad so that they feel like it's congruent, like, oh, I click on this ad, that's a similar vibe of this, got it. And really keeping that landing page simple versus I think it used to be the notion of landing pages was to have these really intense landing pages. I think if we're talking about a paid offer versus a free offer, it's different, but we're talking about just a list builder. Do you have any quick tips around that list builder landing page so that people can look at their page really quick and go, oh, I've hit on these three things, or I've missed the mark, and that's where I should focus?
The part that needs to be congruent is the message in the ad and the message on the page. When it comes to the images, people used to think like, oh, the image that I use in my ad needs to be the same image I use on my landing page. We test so many creatives. We test stock images. We test images of the expert. We test video. It's impossible for your imagery, the creative part of the ad, to match your landing page. But what is important to be congruent is that what it says in the ad when someone clicks that ad and they get to your landing page, if it's something that says something completely different or isn't in line, that is then going to cause confusion and it will break trust. And so you want to use very similar language and something that when they click the ad, what happens next is exactly what they thought it was going to be about because it isn't, the messaging is congruent in the ad. And so that is very important. As far as the landing page goes, if we're just asking somebody to opt in for something for free, typically the best strategy is headline, 3 to 5 bullet points, and an opt in box, and just a very simple bio, picture of yourself, and a bio at the bottom. That's it. You don't need a bunch of testimonials and you don't need all this other stuff. You're just offering somebody some kind of free download. They don't even know what you do yet necessarily. They don't even know if they want to work with you yet. And so we don't want to put the cart before the horse and get too far ahead of ourselves. A lot of people will put all these sales testimonials on their opt in page and they're like, I don't even know what this person does yet. And so I agree, keeping it simple and don't over design it. A lot of people are like, oh, I want my landing page to be beautiful and on brand. And like, this is cold traffic. They don't even know your brand. They don't know who you are. Your brand means nothing to them right at this moment in time. The copy of what it says on that page is what's going to compel them to take action, not because they were like, oh, I really love these colors. So it's okay for you to make it branded, but don't over design the page to where the design is a distraction from what the copy actually says.
Yeah, because I want to be able to see really quickly. We all know how quickly this happens, likely on our phone. That's
Yep.
where the majority of this is happening. I want to be able to quickly see they can solve the problem that I have with this free thing. And here's how I get
Yep.
it. Okay.
Yeah, 97% of people who are accessing Facebook are accessing it from a mobile device. So your landing page, designers design landing pages on computers and then people access them from phones. So make sure that you look at the design on your phone and that it flows smoothly and it doesn't look strange or weird or whatever because 97% of people who are clicking on that ad are looking at their page from a mobile device.
Okay, that's really helpful. So we talked about stats. You kind of gave us an idea of when we know we need to begin to scale, which is when we're looking at that cost per lead or that cost per sale. And we know we're doing really good here, like we are profitable. So I'm ready to scale. What does scaling look like? Do I just throw more money into my ad set budget or is there a strategic way to do it? I would imagine there is.
Yeah, scaling is one of the most frustrating things for people because you finally get everything dialed in and you're hitting the numbers that you need to hit. You're so excited. You're like, this is great. I want more. And then people just like, oh, well, if I'm spending $25 a day, I'll spend $50 a day and I'll get double the amount of leads. And then they do that and they crash the entire thing and the performance dies and it confuses people and it frustrates them. And so scaling is quite complicated because not quite complicated, but it's not as easy as you would think it would be because the algorithm is actually pretty fragile. The algorithm is optimized based on information you already gave it. It's optimized on what it past information. So when you throw something new at it, like more money, it can tend to confuse the algorithm and it can make it wobble a little bit to where the ads don't perform as well. And if you spend too much too fast, that typically makes the results worse and worse and worse. And so I have two approaches to scaling. One is to gradually increase ad spend on what is working. And that can take time. It's a slow game. You're just increasing your budget by a small amount every few days. And for people who want to scale fast, this can be like torture, right? They're just like, this is going to take me 6 months to get to the numbers that I want to get to. But with something that is working well, you don't want to hurt it. And so I'm slow and patient and gradually increase. But if I want to increase quickly, especially maybe say I'm in a launch, right? And I've got 2 weeks to make this to get many leads in as I can or as many sales in as I can, then the easiest way to scale quickly is by adding more audiences, more ad sets, and starting them at a higher budget. And so I tend to do both approaches. I call it going deep and going wide. We go deeper by spending more on the things that are already working and going wider by trying to reach more and more people with the ads that we have that we know work.
So you take those same ads, you duplicate the ad set, change up your targeting, increase your budget so that you don't make the mistake of starting low and then not being able to increase. And then you also gradually start increasing that budget over time on the existing ad set that's doing well. Okay, so when we talk about budget, we talk about how important this is to not start so low. And I hear that recommendation all the time of, oh, just start with $5 a day or, oh, just start with $3 a day. What do you think is actually realistic? Because I talk to people a lot about the effort that it takes to set up your own ads and to monitor your own ads. And when I hear that like $5 a day recommendation, I'm just kind of like, if that's all you have, I don't know that it's worth it. Is there kind of a minimum viable budget that you think that you like recommend to people? I know you've managed over $20 million in ads and you work with really, really high ad spends on a regular basis. But for those that are just getting started or who have tried this and it didn't work for them, knowing where they should start from a budget perspective would probably be helpful.
Yeah. Budget question is one of the hardest ones to answer because the answer is always, it depends. But here's what I can tell you. I've heard two schools of thought that I disagree with both, and then I'll tell you what I find works best. I've heard some people say, don't bother unless you have like $10,000 a month to spend. If you don't have a huge budget, it's just not even worth your time. And I highly, highly disagree with that. But I've also heard this old school of like, you know what, just throw like $5 a day out there, a couple dollars a day and see what happens. And I also disagree with that. And so the reason is Facebook's algorithm is built where it has a 7-day learning phase. And you must get 50 people to convert or opt in or to buy or whatever you're sending them to on that page. You need 50 per week to leave the learning phase. And basically what that means is the algorithm, when you give it your targeting and you give it your ad and all of that, the algorithm now has to start pushing your ad out to those people that you have targeted. And the more people who opt in, the smarter the algorithm gets, where it starts to serve it to better and better people. And therefore your ad becomes more and more optimized. The algorithm needs enough data in order to be smart enough to know what to do. And so it needs 50 conversions a week, which is about 7 to 8 a day. So if you're spending $5 a day, there is no way on God's green earth you're going to get 7 to 8 opt-ins a day. I don't care what you're selling. It's just impossible with how much ads cost. And so what's going to happen is you might get one conversion a day or one every other day. And then the algorithm gets confused because it's not getting any data. And then it just kind of gets stunted and you get crappy results. And so if you're spending too little, you won't get very good results. And so I also understand, for me, I think it's important for people to just get started, right? And so I typically tell people that a good place to start that's going to give you the best chance of at least being able to possibly get 7 to 8 conversions a day is about $20 to $25 a day. I really don't like to start at less than 20 to 25 because there's definitely no chance you're going to hit those 7 to 8 conversions. Ideally, I'd like to be more around 40 to 50 a day. But if someone is like, I can only do $25 a day or nothing, then I'm like, do $25 a day. because you have to start somewhere. You have to start getting the data to see what's my click-through rate going to be? How's my page converting? And if you never get started, you're never going to know. And so what's better to do, the old school way of doing ads would be like, create 10 ad sets and put like $2 a day on each one and then see which ones work the best. And that is no longer a viable strategy that works. What is better to do now would be for you to just test one audience and put all your whole $25 a day on that one. Because again, you need 7 to 8 conversions per day per ad set. So if you've got 10 ad sets and you got $5 a day on each one, you're spending $50 a day. None of them are going to optimize. You'd be better off doing 1 to 2 ad sets and putting that full 50 or 25 and 25 to get the conversions that you need. So you can start with small budgets. And even if that means that you're like, I can spend $50 a day, but for 10 days at a time. And then I need to wait till I get a sale or I get whatever. And then I can run ads again for $50 a day for 10 days at a time. I would rather you do that than either nothing or just dabble at $5 a day, because you're going to get frustrated and you're not going to get anything out of it.
That's really helpful, because I think then it gives people that mission of saving up. So save up so that you can do it right and do it well. And you're so right, especially now if you're going to be using the advantage placement and things like that, the more data it has, the better it can help you. And so making sure that you can put that $50 a day in or whatever it is to get to a place where you're giving it enough data. And then that's also, I think I come from the school of thought of I would rather have the information now faster to know, is this working for me, so that I can make the changes I need to make, because that's opportunity cost. We forget about that. 30 days of playing around with ads and testing things is an opportunity cost that is important for us to think about, where our energy is going, where our time is going, and all of the leads that we missed out on because we were taking so long to figure this out, versus going all in for 7 to 10 days to really master this and get to a place where you know if it's working or not, you know if your landing page is optimized, and you're ready to hopefully start scaling your ads. And so when we talk, we're kind of backtracking a little bit, but I realize not everybody knows like campaign versus ad set. So campaign is where you've decided what kind of ads you're going to run and what the goal is of those ads. And then the ad sets are the way that you break up budget and targeting. We're going to get a little complicated for a second here, but when it comes to like the type of campaign that you run, what type of campaign are they running if they're just looking for a lead?
So a campaign is where you set the objective, like what is my overall goal here? And Facebook recently changed the names of like all of them and confused the crap out of everybody. And so most people that are watching right now are going to be choosing one of two things: leads or sales. Right? So if you're sending traffic directly to a sales page where someone clicks on your ad and they buy something, your campaign, your objective is going to be sales. If you're sending them to a page where they're just opting in for something free, whether it's a lead magnet, it's a webinar, it's a challenge, but they're just opting in, they're not buying anything, then you're going to choose leads as your campaign objective. There's tons of other objectives, but the truth is most people that are watching this are not going to fall in line with those objectives, because it might be for e-commerce or brick and mortar or something else. For brand awareness, which none of us are doing brand awareness. That's for like McDonald's and Pepsi, big household names. And so it's leads or sales. Super easy, depending on which one you're doing.
Okay, great. So I'm running, in most cases, a lead campaign. I know there's some pixel setup and stuff that has to happen. Or that's not anything we could talk about on a podcast and explain.
No, that would take us a lot longer to talk about.
You could Google it, but better yet, just join Adrienne's membership and she's going to walk you through exactly how to do it. But so we've got our campaign set up. We have those different ad sets. And at what point, we kind of talked about scaling, what scaling looks like. But at what point, if I'm running this lead ad and I'm getting leads and I'm like, I'm doing this, I'm growing this email list, I'm making sales from my email list, at what point do I start shifting to doing more like retargeting ads to people on my list, or trying to get those sales, or trying to use ads for my launch?
Yeah. So in order to retarget an audience, you have to have at least 1,000 people in that audience to retarget. So for example, if you were going to try to retarget everybody who opted in for your free lead magnet and then run an ad to them that takes them directly to your sales page, you would need to have at least 1,000 people who opted in before you run that retargeting ad. Retargeting is like this really hot term that people like to throw around, but it's not actually very effective unless you have a pretty good size audience to retarget. Even 1,000 people being the minimum is still pretty small because the algorithm is built for big audiences. Like I said, it's built for e-commerce, it's built for big brands. And so when you have these little tiny audiences that you're trying to retarget, you're not going to get much out of them. So I always tell people, like, hold off on your retargeting until you've built up a couple thousand people to retarget. And in that case, you're going to retarget them with something different, right, than the action they took the first time, whether you're going directly for a sale or whether now you're taking them to a webinar or a challenge or something else. It's just going to be something different than what they originally. It's the next step of what you want them to do, right? Whatever they did the first time, it's like, what's the next step of what you'd like them to do after taking that action? And so retargeting is typically not something you really even need to worry about in the beginning. You're just building up that audience, those opt-ins, those page views, is whatever you're running traffic for, and you'll retarget them later.
Okay, awesome. All right, I have, I think, 3 hopefully quick questions to ask. So one question is buttons. I know people freak out about what the button should say. Have you found that one button performs better than other buttons, or do you have like a use this or that?
So the first few years that I did ads, there was no button. And then they created buttons, and we found that no button at all actually worked better because then it felt more like a native post. Like a native post doesn't have a button on it, right? And so people wouldn't ignore it because they wouldn't think like, oh, this is an ad and I'm going to ignore it. And then Facebook made it to where they forced you to choose a button. You had to have a button. And now they've kind of gone back to you can choose whether to have a button or not. I have not seen any significant difference in terms of what button to use. What typically dictates what button I'm going to use is that learn more, the button that says learn more, is 5, 9, it takes up 10 characters, right? And that button's going to be big. Sign up is 7 characters. And so depending on the headline that you're putting next to that button, if you have a longer headline, you need a smaller button so your whole headline can fit there. And so I know that seems like so weird that you're like, really? You're literally just choosing the button based on what size it is? Yes. We have not seen any significant difference whether we say learn more or sign up. And for some audiences, not using any button at all works great. And for others, it doesn't. And so my answer in this case would be just test it and see what works best for your audience.
Yeah, and I think it's really the image and that headline and copy that are going to make the bigger difference.
Yeah, the button isn't anything that makes the bigger difference.
So another hopefully quick question, and this one's a little nuanced though. Is there a certain lead magnet that you have found to perform, like type of lead magnet? So we have webinars and free video series and PDFs and cheat sheets and all of these. I'm one of those people that I have, like, if I were going to start ads today, I probably have 10 different lead magnets that I could test. Do you have sort of your go-to, like, these things perform the best? Start with this.
Yeah. So I can tell you the things that are harder and then what is easier. So what I would avoid until you're advanced is a quiz funnel. So a lot of people like to set up quizzes and they're like, oh, you can get such cheap leads with quizzes. And you can, but that's because us as human beings love to take quizzes. We love to find out, like, which celebrity would I be if I was a celebrity? And so we're not necessarily interested in what you have. We just want to know the answer to the quiz. And so it will produce a lot of really cheap, not quality leads. So I would avoid quiz funnels altogether. Webinar funnels are great because you're putting people in, they're opting in for a webinar where now you get to showcase your expertise and you can do more selling there. But webinar funnels are pretty expensive because you're asking someone to show up and watch something at a specific time, and people aren't as likely to take action on that as they are for something that they can download. So I say, don't do quiz funnels. You can do a webinar funnel, but it's going to cost you more money. It will produce a higher quality lead. But really, in the beginning, I tell people to use something that is a simple download. But you want to be careful with that download. And I want to take a minute, just if I can, to explain and give an example of a mistake that I made when creating my lead magnets, that hopefully this example will help you avoid that mistake. When I first started running ads to grow my email list for people who were interested in Facebook ads, my lead magnet was like the 5, I don't remember the word for word, but it was like 5 keys to creating a successful ad, right? And people were opting in for that thing like crazy. It was so amazing. And then I would have this, like, one of my first emails they would get after they opted in for it is I would respond to them and ask them, like, oh, tell me about your business. What are you using ads for? And how long have you been doing ads? And everybody was like, never done an ad in my life. And this is for my direct marketing company or blah, 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 blah. And my goal was that I wanted to build a list full of people who had been dabbling in ads, but were struggling to like get them to work. And so I realized this is attracting people who've never even done an ad by saying, here's the 5 keys to a successful ad. So I built a list full of people who weren't my ideal clients. So I changed my lead magnet to be a Facebook ad scorecard. And it was like, here's 5 areas you need to score your ads that are running right now to see why they're not performing well. Well, if I have never run an ad, that is not going to be of interest to me whatsoever. I am not going to opt in for that thing if I've never even run an ad. And so when you're creating your lead magnet, it needs to be something that I would start with something that is downloadable, that it's so specific to the person that has the problem that you solve. And it is a tool you're using to showcase your authority and credibility and knowledge and expertise so that when they consume this document or whatever it is you deliver to them, that they want more. That really is what makes a very strong lead magnet.
That's so smart because I struggle with the same thing. We've talked about this where I'm like, I don't want to run ads because I only work with people who have established course and membership communities. And how do I find those people? The last thing I want is everybody and their mother on my Facebook list who wants to have a Facebook group. That's not who I'm trying to attract.
So you need to create a lead magnet that would be something that only someone who already has a membership is a problem that they have, so that someone who hasn't even started, they're not even thinking about that. It's not on their radar.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Okay. And one more question for those who are more advanced. I'm thinking about my clients who are doing launches and they keep coming to me and they're like, our ads are what kept us from hitting the goal for the launch. Like we couldn't scale as fast as we wanted to. Do you have any like recommendations in that regard for the people who are truly spending a ton of money on ads for their launches and they keep hitting what they feel like is a ceiling or they can't scale fast enough?
I'm going to give you the simplest answer that I can because that is a complicated answer that requires a lot of planning and data. But the reason that most people can't hit their numbers is that they do start out in the beginning very light, right? Like, let's just put this out there, and see what happens. And then it's going well. And then they're like, great, ramp it up. And they run out of time because, like I said, it's hard to increase your budget quickly. And so I usually tell people to start at a way higher budget than what they like in the beginning and go really big in the beginning, knowing that by day 3 or day 4, you're going to start to turn some things off that aren't working well. And you can reallocate that budget to the things that are going well. And so most of the time, the reason people can't scale enough or even spend what they want to spend is they start way too low from the beginning with the attitude that, like, I'm going to ramp up. And I actually start really high and kind of ramp down as I'm refining and then kind of reallocating budget over the rest of the time.
That makes so much sense based on what you've explained with that algorithm. And I think coming with that philosophy for those of you that have data to back that ads work for you and you're running similar funnels that you've ran in the past, you're just doing a new launch, starting with a really, really high budget and knowing that you're going to ramp down if you need to is the smart way to do it. Well, Adrienne, this has been so good. I know people are like taking massive notes. You can listen to this again 1,000 times. You can listen to it on half speed too. So there's still a lot of gaps though, right? Like, how do I set up the tracking? How do they know that I got a lead? What do I need to be doing? So can you talk a little bit about your membership and how you support people in the membership with ads?
Yeah. So if you've never run an ad ever in your entire life, I would actually suggest Facebook has a free program called Facebook Blueprint that I would just go do that if you've never ever run an ad. It's going to give you the very basics of like, what's a campaign? What's an ad set? What's an ad? It's going to give you the basics. I would just start there. From there, I have what's called Power Players Club, and it is a monthly mentorship program where we help with live Q&A calls where I look at people's ads, I look at their targeting. We have a copy coach that reviews ad copy and landing pages to help that perform better, plus some foundational trainings in there that give you the best chance of success. So Power Players Club is for those that aren't at a level where they can afford to hire someone to do the ads for them. And they need somebody to like hold their hand and kind of do it with them. So that's Power Players Club. And then I have the Done For You ad management. That's for 7-figure business owners and up that want someone to take over their ads, help them scale their business, help them grow quickly, and they have the budget for that.
Awesome. And you have a cheat sheet, I think, an audience targeting
Yes.
cheat sheet. Where can they get their hands on that?
Yes. So I'm going to have you put that link in the show notes or something because I can't remember the link off the top of my head.
Yeah. I think it's just wearepowerplay.com/cheat sheet, but we'll definitely put the link in the description.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. But what I did in that cheat sheet, it's totally free. You guys can have it. Is I have taken the most common audiences that most people are trying to reach in Facebook, especially if you have a membership. And I've already done all the work for you of telling you how to target those people and reach those audiences. And so you just go in there and you look for who you're trying to reach. And I told you all the targeting to use in there. So it'll save you hours of time and a lot of money.
Oh man, that's awesome because I've done that before. I've gone in and looked to see, oh, can I target Amy Porterfield's people? Can I target so-and-so's people?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? All right, Adrienne, well, thanks so much for hanging with us. And you are really close to convincing me to try ads. Try some ads. So we'll see. We may have to do a part 2 analyzing Shanna's ad performance.
That would be fun.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thank you.